Hello and welcome back. Today's video is going to be a race recap of the Littleton Twilight Criterium 2022 in Littleton, Colorado. This is a Cat 5 race, obviously. I am Cat 5. So it was at 2:45, kind of right at the heat of the day. Works out, actually, pretty well. The men's P1-2 was in some pretty ugly conditions, a lot of rain. You'll see at the end of this video that there's some pretty heavy clouds coming in. So, yeah, I think we timed it pretty well. I typically do better in the heat than I do in the cold. So, that being said, that is not a spoiler for today's video. This was not a great race for me. A lot of factors kind of coming together and making it a bit of a challenge for me personally. But I survived my first full season of crit racing with all my skin intact, no broken bones, no broken bikes, all is well. That was kind of the only real objective I had for this year. So, mission accomplished. I mentioned it's not a great race for me personally. I had a couple things going on, to be honest with you. First of all, my family was in town. This is the first time that I've seen them in basically a year since we moved here to Colorado. So there was a lot of sort of excitement there and a lot of focus on making sure I wasn't being selfish with my time or putting them out. So that was always sort of in the back of the mind. On the way to the race, actually on the highway, had a bolt come through my windshield, which was awesome. Not the $480 or $520 in windshield replacement that I was looking to spend this weekend, but stuff happens, and I'm going to try not to let that peeve me too much. So, all good. Because family was in town, their flights came in pretty early in the day, so actually showed up to the race like 2 hours early. Pros and cons there. The pro, thankfully, I forgot my helmet. I have a pretty good system down at this point. I've got everything I need for a bike race. I can pack in one backpack, aside from my bike and my helmet. The bike made it, the helmet did not. So I had to run to a local bike shop, find a helmet, buy one. By the time I got back, I realized that Laser had set up a tent where they had the helmet set out, and I probably could have just borrowed one. But I was pretty freaked out about the fact that I'd gotten all the way down here and was missing a part that, by USA Cycling rules and also just by common sense, I needed to have with me. So, what else? Yeah, that was kind of a pretty big bump in adrenaline, I've got to say. I've already got the nervous energy of sort of having my folks around and feeling a little bit of pressure to perform well. Then I had that and the windshield going. It was just a lot at one time to handle. So I got on the bike real early. I spent basically an hour and 15 minutes just doing laps around the track, thinking, like, okay, I'll shake my legs out and get some of this nervous energy out of my system. Well, I got a little bit too much energy out of my system, showed up at the start line a little bit dehydrated. I mean, it's only 30 minutes, but still, a little dehydrated, a little hot, a little cooked, which is kind of funny because I wasn't doing anything. Like, I was just, like, spinning at 100 watts. So, but it was really hot. I'm sweating. Had a whole bunch of sort of adrenaline pumping. And then basically 2 laps in, my teammate, which more on that later, crashed out in front of me. Pretty spectacular fashion. I think clipped a pedal and took out the guy next to him. Myself and one other rider sort of managed to squeeze between his handlebars and I think his feet or something. So the right pros, and everything has pros and cons. Pros, found out that maybe I have okay handling skills. Cons, I was now the only one in a team jersey still alive. As soon as that happened, I kind of obviously that's a big shot of adrenaline as well, but I basically took a whole lap like soft pedaling and thinking, okay, well, he's going to get up and he's going to need some help to get back on. So given that I'm not feeling great, like I'll help him out and I'll get him back into position and then I'll kind of call it a day. About a lap and a half later, I find out that he had abandoned, which very fair to him. Like his entire ass was hanging out of his bibs. So that seemed pretty reasonable to me. But at that point, I kind of just resigned myself to like, okay, let's just stay upright. Again, I mentioned that the goal for this year was stay intact and not jeopardize my body, my health, my bike. So after that, I was just kind of, let's just have a little bit of workout. That was one of two, I think it was two crashes, at least that I saw. The second one looked a little gnarlier, to be honest with you. I wasn't involved in it, but I came through the corner obviously pretty close after it had happened because people were everywhere. Glasses and bottles were all over the place. And the poor guy looked like he was two different height humans stitched together down the middle. Like one shoulder about 3 or 4 inches higher than the other. So I don't know if he snapped a collarbone or what. I did see him in the medical tent afterwards. I didn't have a chance to check and make sure he was okay or anything. Obviously, there were individuals taking care of that. But, yeah, it didn't look good. So, long story short, we survived, accomplished this season's mission. And just sort of in summary of the season, I actually had an opportunity to learn a lot, man. Like, this was my first season racing crits. I've done triathlons and time trials before, but never crit racing, and it's a very different beast. I spent a little bit of time sort of in group rides, in traffic, like traffic meaning other riders. So I'm relatively comfortable with that, but it's just you're very aware of the fact that it's a very different environment when you're all pushing and you're all kind of wanting to be first into a corner. You're all trying to like break each other, if you will, so definitely a new environment for me to be in, and I think that it gave me a lot of perspective on what it's going to take to progress in the sport, which is great because I'm definitely a sort of the more you know, the more you can prepare for type of person. One of the biggest takeaways I took from this season was really being conscious of your front wheel. I think in like 5 or 6 races this season, I think I probably saw as many crashes just caused by someone trying to get in position in a turn, or taking a turn too fast and not being able to corner hard enough, and then running into someone's rear wheel with their front wheel, all kinds of stuff. Being Cat 5, like, these are not the most proficient, and I count myself in that group, to be clear, not the most proficient bike handlers, not the most confident in traffic by and large. So it's sort of a hazardous environment to be getting real antsy in. And that was just a big one. Just being conscious of not overlapping tires, wheels. Like, we're not at a level where I need to have my front wheel on someone else's derailleur to get the exact draft that I need. Yeah, so excellent learning point there. What else? I mean, not a whole lot else, to be honest with you. It was just a lot of exposure to a sport that I haven't had a lot of exposure to before. And I look forward to coming back next year with some better fitness, some better skills. Maybe, I mean, that sounds pretty boomer, but maybe do some reading and figure out sort of how best to stay with that front group. Like I said, not the most confident bike handlers, and I can tell very clearly that there is some definite benefit to being in a front group, at the cost of working a little bit harder. It seems like that's a safer, more efficient place to be in some respects. Smoother lines, smoother power distribution, etc. So yeah, what's ahead for me? Really, just the off season, man. Like I know it's only August, but I'm kind of calibrating to this Colorado season length, if you will. Coming from Texas, there's no real off season, so this is going to be a good opportunity to sort of refocus on my 4 watt per kilo goals. That'll take some doing, but I think I'm going to focus first on sort of getting myself down a little bit in weight. I've mentioned before I'm a heavier rider, 205 to 210, kind of depending. So focus on losing a little bit of weight first, and then we'll start worrying about the power. But I think for me, it's always much harder to stay focused on my body composition and my weight than it is to really put on power or strength and stuff like that. So I guess that's just kind of, was that ectomorphic, I guess? I don't know. But yeah, we're going to refocus on the 4 watt per kilo stuff. One thing I'd really like to focus on is this sort of what I struggled with last winter was, last winter maybe not the greatest example, given that I didn't spend a whole lot of time on the bike at all. I was adjusting to sort of new climate, the fact that you actually have freezing temperatures here, there's snow on the ground, daylight is like 3 hours of the day, and the rest of the day I just wanted to eat like comfort food and drink bourbon. So we're gonna work on that. I'd like to kind of break the off season into 4-week blocks, sort of pretty typical training layout. 3 weeks on, a week off, or maybe 2 weeks on with like 3 or 4 days off, and then repeat that depending on what kind of stage I'm in as far as the training program. And the last thing I'd like to focus on is doing a little bit of Zwift racing. It's been like 3 or 4 years since I've been on Zwift, and I do remember really enjoying that Zwift racing aspect. I've been a staunch proponent of Trainer Road. I think that their product is probably as close as you can get to calling something an industry leader in sort of your on-trainer, I guess, training program. Those workouts and the way that they're structured and the way that they're calibrated has been excellent, like super valuable tool for me personally. But that sort of communal aspect of being able to do group rides on Zwift, being able to have something to look at that's not just power numbers and data, I think will be a good way of having a little bit of extra stimulation for the off season, and like I said, keeping focused during the winter, helping adjust to that. So I think good things are on the horizon. I'm going to be moving out of a very small, somewhat dingy apartment into a nicer place, 2 bedrooms. I'll have the ability to have an office and sort of a trainer set up that's not in my living room or in my bedroom, and kind of separate out the work side of life from the recreation and relaxation side of life. That's something I've struggled with enormously this past year, of just sort of the workload has been absolutely insane. Working in oil and gas, I'm sure you can imagine why at this point in time. So it's been pretty difficult to parse out work and rest, if you will, or work and recreation. So I think, like I said, good things are on the horizon. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate you watching the video, and I'm going to probably be trying to bring you at least one video a week. It may just be a short, it may be some sort of a breakdown, something like this, but we'll see. This is mostly just for accountability and my own enjoyment. So I appreciate you watching, and I can't wait to see you next time. Take it easy. Bye. in the grand scheme of things, relative to cycling as a whole, that's not much time, right? But what I have found is important is making sure that you're hydrated and you have a little bit of like fuel in you before these. I have noticed that when I'm dehydrated, especially in this race, which probably wasn't helped by all the adrenaline and sort of the heart rate staying really high for a while before the race, the power just falls off a cliff, really. Like, there's no sort of, you kind of lose that ability to track, like, okay, I think I could do this power a couple more times if it gets like real spiky, that kind of feeling. So being aware of that, understanding your body, staying hydrated, stuff like that, just little stuff at this point. That's been really important. Things that I'd like to learn next season is how to stay in that front group. And a lot of that is definitely fitness based, I would say, at this point. I mean, I'm a pretty heavy rider. I've been pretty transparent about that. I'm like 205 or 210 pounds right now, with not a huge FTP. It's a respectable one, I would say, as far as maybe time trialing goes. But as far as racing and climbing and all that stuff, I'm definitely underpowered. So learning how to stay in that front group efficiently is something that I'd really like to focus on next season. And the reason for that is the safety aspect seems to be, you're making a very clear trade-off. You're making that trade-off of, I'm going to work harder, but there's a good chance that I'm going to have a safer, cleaner line. I'm not going to be in this pack of people who are trying to go like 4 wide through a turn. And I maybe stand a better chance of finishing in a better position as long as I can just hang in there and stay upright. Like, I've been caught up in these situations a couple times already just this year where you're dodging a crash in front of you, which I've been fortunate. I've managed that. I probably won't be able to manage that every single time in the future. So just minimizing that risk, I feel like, will definitely be sort of a benefit for me. That'll probably be my focus next year. Again, that's definitely dependent on sort of fitness level. And that kind of brings me to my last point for the day. I know it's been sort of a longer talking portion, but just a couple. It's the last race of the season. I wanted to get a couple things sort of off my chest and sort of summarize. So moving into the off season, my focus is going to shift towards my 4 watt per kilo threshold goal. I have not really prioritized that, to be honest, and just to be transparent. Work has been at sort of such a pace that my focus has had to be work, not necessarily the nuances of my fitness level and my sort of competitive ability. I've just been focused on trying to, keep the lights on. So I'd like to focus on that. I'm going to build a little bit of a schedule for my 4 watt per kilo program that I'll share here on the channel, just for, I guess, accountability's sake again. And I'd also like to work on just maintaining my fitness better over the winter. I know that those will kind of take care of each other. If I am focused on the 4 watt per kilo, I will by nature be taking care of my fitness. But specifically speaking, I want to make sure that when I take a week off in between blocks, or when I take like 4 or 5 days off in between blocks, that I'm not doing what I did last winter, where it just kind of turned into binging on cornbread and bourbon and like comfort foods, right? Having moved from Texas, adjusting to a cold and dark and no daylight kind of winter here in Colorado was a massive adjustment, and I didn't necessarily handle it the way that I would like to have. So those will be the 2 focuses. this winter. Here at the end of August, I'm going to be riding from Fort Collins to Colorado via Netherland, Breckenridge, Salida. So that'll be a big 4-day, 400-mile sort of just go and have fun, have an adventure. That may wind up being abbreviated. I'm already looking at sort of those dates and realizing that work will probably force me to shorten that schedule, potentially to only 2 days. But regardless, we'll have some fun. And then maybe using some Zwift racing as a little bit of sort of carrot and a stick sort of deal. My last experience with Zwift was probably 3 years ago, back when I was heavy into the triathlon stuff and doing a lot of group rides on Zwift, just because it was a little more stimulating than getting on Trainer Road. Bless them. I mean, Trainer Road's product is, I would kind of consider it an industry leader as far as sort of indoor riding and trainer riding is concerned. But that communal aspect of Zwift, the ability to get on there and do a race, that's far more stimulating and might help sort of achieve that first goal of really staying focused during the winter. So yeah, that's kind of where things are headed. So you can kind of expect videos that are focused on those items coming ahead. Yeah, long story short, man, it's been an awesome season. This is going to be an awesome opportunity, sort of joining this team to really make some friends here and work on my fitness and maintain that accountability. And also just kind of the excitement of, being part of a team. I grew up playing soccer for 16 years as a goalkeeper. Loved having a team around me at all times. Lacrosse for many years. Loved having a team around me at all times. And starting my cycling journey in triathlon was sort of an adjustment, because triathlon itself, while you have tri-teams, it's very much an individual sport. You're spending a lot of time alone, particularly in the races, and you're dependent primarily just on yourself. Cycling has been, to this point, very much the same. Like I do my rides on my own. I do my workouts on my own. If I'm on a trainer, I'm on Trainer Road. And while part of me feels like I do better that way, there's a part of me that has to acknowledge that I am still a social creature, and it'd be nice to have people around me. So yeah, that's kind of all I got for today. I appreciate you bearing with me. I know I kind of droned on there. I'm kind of just trying to freestyle a little bit of a summary of the season to myself and by proxy to you guys. So we'll see how things go for the rest of the month. I say that primarily because work is going to really ramp up here for the next couple weeks. But we're going to try and stay focused. We're going to try and have a little bit of fun. I'll be on the bike. So, yeah, lots of good stuff to come as far as I'm concerned. And I appreciate you guys listening. So I'll catch you next time. Take it easy. Have fun. Later.